I call Paseta Sam Lotu-Iiga.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise and speak on this, the first reading of the Social Housing Reform Bill. And I want to again thank the Minister next to me, the Honourable Dr Nick Smith, for his vision and his hard work and determination for bringing these solutions to this House tonight. Budget 2013, as we heard from the Honourable Bill English, makes bold changes to the way that we will deliver social housing assistance to those most in need, sir. We're ensuring that housing is in the right sizes, in the right places, in the right conditions for those who need it most. This bill will help address those issues that Labor, quite frankly, did not have the intestinal fortitude nor the appetite to fix themselves. It will increase the pool of resources available to our service providers and get much needed support to those in need. You see, Labor broke the housing sector by their inept leadership under the direction of former ministers Mahari, Carter and Marianne Street. This infamous triumvirate of slum landlords provided cold, damp and mouldy homes to those most in need. And New Zealanders are grateful that this government will have insulated every Housing New Zealand home by the end of this year. You see, that triumvirate oversaw a sector where the average price of housing in Auckland between 1999 and 2008 grew by 91%. 91%, sir. 2.5 times the rate that those prices are going up under this national government. 2.5 times faster. They oversaw interest rates at all-time highs of 8%, inflation over 4%, and a waiting list that grew longer and longer and longer. And that, sir, is absolutely disgraceful. And it's a direct example of the type of hands-on leadership those opposite continue to preach in this House. Hands-on with the economy, and they increase house prices, inflation and interest rates. Hands-on with electricity, and they wipe $500 million out of the pockets of hard-working New Zealanders. Hands-on with ACC, and Mr Smith will know this, and the social insurance scheme almost became insolvent. You see, Mr Speaker, you cannot trust, and the people in New Zealand can't trust Labor to get their hands on anything. Now, you compare that, sir, with the John Key-led national government, and we've delivered the lowest interest rates for over 50 years, the lowest inflation rate since 1999, under 1%, and Mr Lees-Galloway knows that, and continued economic growth during the most turbulent financial times globally. That may not matter to Marianne Street, and it certainly sounds like it doesn't matter to Ms Dalziel, but it matters to the average Kiwi paying a mortgage and supporting their family. And this bill is part of our reforms to deliver assistance to those most in need and those who need social housing. So, as the Minister has already stated, this bill extends income-related rents to community housing providers, transfers the needs assessment process to the Ministry of Social Development, and it provides reviewable tenancy for all Housing New Zealand tenants. See, we on this side of the House are about growing the involvement of those that are best placed to help our most vulnerable. And government, sir, is not the only answer. And if we are to be lambasted for using the skills, assets and expertise of our social housing providers, like the Salvation Army, like Court Housing and others, then Ms Dalziel, so be it. So be it. The Greens call this privatisation. We call it helping those families that most need help. Community housing providers, and Ms Dalziel knows this, can often do a better job of meeting the needs because they provide wraparound services for their clients. The Minister's already referred to it. They provide churches and NGOs and community providers. Often they integrate their housing with support for people with disabilities, mental health, addictions around drug and alcohol, as well as family dysfunction. And there is no reason why a family in need should receive less support just because the bricks and mortar of their house are owned by a community provider rather than the government. So what's important is that those most in need get that support that they require. So we're looking to bring in renewable tenancies for all Housing New Zealand tenants. And I also want to commend the former Minister, the Honourable Phil Heatley, because he began that work under his tenure. And this will allow people to transition and give them support to move into alternative housing when their situations improve and they are able to become independent. So you see, Miss Dalziel and Miss Street and their former colleagues, they oversaw tenancies where people had incomes over 80,000 were living in state houses, while thousands languished and suffered on waiting lists. In Maunga Care, ma'am, I've often seen 3-bedroom homes occupied by single tenants that refuse to move to more appropriate accommodation and make way for families that are actually in need. This bill is about improving their access to social housing for those who actually need it. State housing will always be there for those who need it and for the duration of that need. That's most important. But, Mr. Speaker, as the Minister's already said, we're making a record investment of $2.9 billion into Housing New Zealand over the next 3 years, and we're tackling the issues that matter to New Zealanders. We were elected, sir, on a platform to deliver better, smarter and more innovative public services. And with this bill, we are delivering on that promise. Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill to the House. Thank you.
The Honourable.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we've just heard...
The Honourable Annie King.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've just heard